free. My daughter shared with me a story yesterday as we were talking about my talk today about a woman. You can find this on Mayim Bialik's Breakdown podcast, if you're a podcast watcher. Mayim Bialik, Breakdown. She says, I break it down so you don't have to break down. She has really some great esoteric guests on there. So she was interviewing a woman by the name, I believe her name is Elizabeth Cohn. I will do my best to remember to include it in the e-blast if you want to watch it. So Elizabeth Cohn had a near-death experience many, many years ago. And what led up to this near-death experience, it was a Sunday morning. She was walking into church. There was a thunderstorm where she was. She had her umbrella and her 2-year-old and her 4-year-old. So she, I don't know how it all played out yet, because I haven't listened to the podcast myself. My daughter was sharing the story with me. But she told the boys to go up under the awning while she got rest of everything together that she needed to get together to go into the church for Sunday morning service. In this thunderstorm, she had her wedding rings on and was holding on to the metal part of the umbrella. And lightning struck her umbrella and knocked her to the ground, knocked the soles of her shoes off of her shoes. And she's laying there on the ground. Now, in her immediate assuming, she was up on her feet and getting to her boys, to help her boys. That's what she immediately recalled, that she saw herself and felt herself doing that. She was actually lying unconscious on the ground. Someone ran into actually it was a synagogue, and asked if there was a doctor, and they ran out and they helped her and tried to revive her. And from Elizabeth's, her experience of this was that she went to that place where she felt herself outside of her body, observing that and going, whoops. And then she was in a garden, in a beautiful garden, where she heard her grandfather's voice. But as she became more oriented to this voice, she realized it wasn't really her grandfather who was speaking to her. It was God speaking to her through the voice of her grandfather, because that's what she would recognize. Again, her experience of it was that she was in this place for 2 weeks. And there were orbs of light, and somehow she felt like she was able to track time. And there was this conversation of, you can stay if you want to stay. But this really is an early exit. This was not the planned exit. There are still things that you said you would do in this lifetime that you have not yet done. So you get to choose what you're going to do. It's okay if you want to go ahead, and you can stay here, and we'll go over onto that's on the other side of the mountains, where it's even more beautiful than it is right here. And she was shown some things about her life that she would do by going back into her body, and she's gone, that seems really hard. I don't know if I want to do that. But I've got my boys, they're 2, they're 4. And she went back into her body. She was actually only gone for a very, very brief amount of time. But on the other side, in infinity, it felt like 2 weeks. I love this story, and so many like it, of people that have had near-death experiences. They give me hope. They increase my faith. Over the years, they have removed fear of the unknown, because it is through these experiences that we are given a glimpse of what it's like. But she chose to come back. And she chose to come back because she wasn't finished with the agreement, with her life contract. So, you said yes. She said yes. She had a chance to say forget about it, but she said yes. And we each, I believe, come into this world with a contract, with an agreement, whatever you want to call it, and whatever your frame of understanding is, with a plan of what we are going to do in this incarnation on the planet. You said yes, now what? How are you doing with it? You may not even know. You may not even know how you're doing with it. Because we don't, in this incarnation, we are working through these physical bodies with this egoic center within us, and we do our best to show up each and every day with the tools we have and the information we have. But when we can remember that we are in the presence of pure being, that we are pure being, when we can remember this, then we can increase our game. We can find a way to stay centered within that place of love and presence. So you said yes. What are you going to do with it? How many of us right now, don't answer this, I mean, unless you want to, but you don't need to answer. You don't need to tell us, but are having a bit of a struggle with the dense energies on the planet right now. Would you say that maybe there are some dense energies on the planet right now? If not on the planet, at least in the United States, there might just be a little bit of mud and drudge that's making it just a little bit difficult to do our normal days, to find that place where we can stay in the light. And if we're, well, you all know how old I am, but remember the paddle with the ball attached to it that we used to play with? How many of you were good at that? I don't know how good I was at that, but doesn't that kind of feel like, most of you, not all of you, but a lot of you know what I'm talking about, right? Raise your hand. Don't leave me up here alone. Okay, thank you. But at that paddle ball with that rubber string, and sometimes you hit it and sometimes you don't. It's hit and miss, right? And you're just like all over the place. Oh, what about later? I bought my kids those, what were they called, bonkers?
Oh yeah, those clackers.
Oh, clackers. Oh, yeah. Whose bright idea was that? Those things were horribly dangerous. But so that's on the string, and you got these 2 glass balls, and when you hit yourself or your sister, it hurts. Yeah. But that's kind of what life is like sometimes. Like we're all just clacking our way through our days. We have the opportunity to find our center, to remain in our center. Some days we do it pretty well, other days we don't. Some moments we do it pretty well, other moments we don't. I find myself being driven further and further into the silence. if I get too far out here into the world, my circuits just start going haywire. And I don't function very well, and I have to pull back in. And even when I have my devices silenced on my iPad, I still get messages. Just a little love. We're here. We've got you. We've got your back. Any of you feeling similarly? That it just takes a little more work. We get out there, we find ourselves just spewing, right, and attaching, and then it's like, wait a minute, bring it back in. Bring it back in. I spent last week with my siblings, almost all of us, and it was a wonderful week of just being present to family and allowing for healing conversations. Even in the presence of different mindsets, different political views, different spiritual views, of still being able to come together and just be, and it was sweet. We have the capacity as human beings, first off, and also as truth students of spiritual metaphysics, to be able to come back in and use our power in amazingly wonderful ways. We just have to pay attention to how we're feeling and what we're doing. We get to choose. We are the thinkers who think the thoughts. We're told that over and over again. Basic unity principle, the law of mind action. Thoughts create things. Do we believe it or do we not? We have to gently, gently, gently remind ourselves all the time. My talk is going to be a little different than what I thought it was because we had technical issues with our videos not playing correctly. And I was going to share with you, and if any of you when you opened the e-blast and you saw Ellen Davenport's video, if any of you watched that, I was going to use that as the basis of my talk. I did put it in there, right? Did anybody actually read the e-blast and see that it was there? No? Okay. Well, go home and do that, because it's really cool. So Ellen Davenport, who is the Vice President of Communications at Unity Village, she did this wonderful YouTube video on our 5 principles. So that was primarily what I was going to, well, that wasn't primarily what I was going to talk about, but that's how I was going to give us our how-tos, how to go forward and go and do. So I will do just a little bit of that. This rendition here is what we affirm together each Sunday. And then I'll get into the more simplified version. But what I really want to do is I want to share with you a reading by Jim Rigby called This Day. And Jim Rigby is the minister of a Presbyterian church in Austin, Texas. His messages are so unity. It is understandable if you are beginning this day feeling powerless and adrift in a storm of cruelty and impending violence. Let me start that over again. I had my emphasis not where I wanted it. It is understandable if you are beginning this day feeling powerless and adrift in a storm of cruelty and impending violence. The news of the day can leave us clutching fearfully for some kind of control over our lives and some kind of hope for our species. But what if we refuse to live out that scenario? What if we refuse to be defined by the brutal externalities we see in news reports? What if this day we see ourselves as healing cells in the common body of humanity. I'm going to repeat that. What if this day we see ourselves as healing cells in the common body of humanity? Is that not beautiful? That reframe, that shift in the mindset. This is who we are. This is what we have the power to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to take a moment or two or a day or an hour and just go outside or into your bedroom or in the shower and just scream and cry for a minute, because you might need to do that because there's a lot of energy flying around. And as intuitive beings, we pick it up. But we get to stay conscious enough to figure out how to gently work with that so it doesn't overcome us, so that we can instead be these healing cells in the common body of humanity. We can resolve to live this day with our humanity intact, no matter what others do. We can choose to empty ourselves into this day fearlessly as radiant manifestations of what it means to be fully human. It is possible to live this day as isolated individuals born into a time of meaningless cruelty and ignorance. It is possible to do that. But it is also possible to live this day as lovers of humankind who offer ourselves as living reminders that cruelty is not courage, certainty is not wisdom, and domination of others is never true peace. Is never true peace. True peace is finding that place within us that remembers that we are one with that holy presence by whatever name you call God. We probably can all come up with different names of God, but we all know what it feels like. We know what it feels like. We know what it sounds like. You are the thinker that thinks your thoughts. You are the feeler that feels your feelings. And we are the feelers that feel the energy of the planet and beyond. But we have a choice. We came here in this lifetime for whatever our individual reasons were. Right now, every one of us in this room, on some level, had a soul agreement to come here at this time, in this place, to share love and light on this day, in this hour, in this minute. Nothing is by accident. And we get to pay attention and observe everything that is going on around us, and we can discern what is mine to do about it. What part am I playing in this world today? Am I a part of the madness, of the chaos? Am I going to choose to contribute to that? Or am I going to choose to be the healing cell, to be the love and the light? Some moments we get it pretty good, other moments we may not. But we're wise enough when we get off course to come back into balance. So we're not going to spend much time with the 5 principles. We'll do that another day. These are your tools, though, for your tool belt. This is a simplified version. I'm not going to go in and discuss them. God is all there is, present everywhere. All humans are divine in their essence. It is our nature to be divine because we just are. We were not born into sin. We were born into goodness and love. Our thoughts have creative power, prayer and meditation, and then what we do. What do you do with it? Go back to this place when you find yourself feeling off. And I love this, and maybe I've used this before. Take a little time to be amazed by something you won't enjoy unless you consciously choose to focus on it. See the things you can't see when you're rushing. Hear the things you can't hear when you're stressing. Get so caught up in your senses that everything else seems to stop for a moment, because things don't actually stop. So we have to be the ones who do. We can choose. We think. We feel. We make the choice to just be still and hold that healing light. God is, I am, I think, I pray, I live, and so it is. Amen.